Alrighty, so this is going to be a long video. Obviously, most people can see the length and duration at the end, but just in case you missed that, it'll be lengthy, but people know that my videos are fairly long. So, to make up for my extensive explanation, because I wouldn't necessarily call it a rant, I mean it is a rant, but it's educational. Because I used to just say rants, but then I see what other people constitute as rants, and I realize that I'm doing a disservice to the quality of what I discuss, as by just categorizing it as rants with the rest of the ranters that rant about shit. So, that being said, my main topic for this is obviously going to be the correlation between Islamophobia or the Islamophobia rhetoric and the feminist Marxist movement.
I feel like I've been really triggered lately and I just want to kind of vent and get it out of my system. It's really hard being triggered all the time, and I'm not kidding, it's all the time for me at this point. I get dressed in the morning, I'm triggered. I take a shower, I'm triggered. I get in the car, I'm triggered. I go for a walk, I'm triggered. I leave my house, I'm triggered. I sit in my room all day, I'm triggered.
Okay, first off, I have no idea who this lady is or how to get a hold of her, but please, for the love of God, somebody tell her she should read a dictionary. I swear, like, I'll let you have this one. I got it for $3.99, and it was even 75% off that. And I wondered, it's a great dictionary. It's good. It's one of the complete editions with the thesaurus, and it mind-boggled me that this was cheap. And then I realized it's because nobody reads these anymore, so they have to get rid of them. And so you might as well go get yours now, especially if you still actually do read and, don't want to completely annihilate the English language still, because at some point I'm sure they'll be triggered and they'll start burning these. So get them while you can, get them while they're hot. And it probably just triggered the hell out of you, apparently, for saying that, for insinuating that you're not very smart. But dictionaries don't lie. I'm not saying that you're not smart. You just don't know your definition. I think trigger means something else to you. Okay, so first off, that's not what the definition says. Secondly, I think that you're talking about being out of breath or being lethargic, exhausted. I think lethargic might be a little bit too complex for Common Core. Maybe you're lethargic from getting up in the morning and being that heavy. Maybe you're lethargic when you're trying to, struggle and squeeze into your clothes. Maybe you're lethargic when you go on a walk. Maybe you're lethargic when you get in the car and you go somewhere. Because that would make total sense, because when you're overweight, you're carrying all that weight, and usually you end up being immobile or sitting down most of the time, even though you seem to be triggered or lethargic when you're doing that. But if you've ever seen that show on A&E about, like, My 600-Pound Life, just even being heavy, to sit up is exhausting, and I would know. So I'm not sitting here saying, ew, you're disgusting, you're fat. Been there, done that. I obviously have my own struggle with that. So, and when I have been fatter, specifically like when I was on bed rest for surgery, I blew up. And it was a pain in the ass to bounce back from that, and I'm actually still in progress with that. And it made me lethargic. And it made me uncomfortable. Not triggered. So it says trigger. Of earlier trickster. Says one that pulls, to pull, a movable lever that activates a device when it is squeezed. The part of a firearm lock moved by the finger to fire a gun. So I think maybe because most socialist Marxists or feminists are progressives, therefore they're against guns and they don't understand how guns work, just like President Obama. Maybe the reason why you said use the word trigger because nobody ever uses it for anything, because you don't know what it's for. Because that definition was actually created because of guns. In fact, I have this book here, which is really nifty, the Webster's Origin of Words. And I actually looked in this. There is no origin word of trigger in there. Therefore, that exact word was created as to describe the pulling mechanism of a firearm. And then it says to trigger, to pull, to fire by pulling a trigger, to initiate or activate, to set off as by a trigger. Activate, crank, drive, move, propel, run, set, off, spark, start, touch off, turn on, or activate. So, are you saying that you're pretty much histrionic or borderline personality disorder status, or even partially bipolar, and when you say trigger, is that supposed to be like your warning label for you're about to turn into a fucking crazy erratic bitch on everyone? Because that would be the only thing that I could translate if you're going to if I even fathom that you're actually trying to go by the definition. But here's actually another definition for you that I think we can mad lib into what you're saying that would be a bit more accurate, okay? So, our word of the day is insecure, uncertain, not protected, unsafe, not firmly fastened or fixed, loose, not highly stable. That makes sense, right? With the trigger. And it's like lacking assurance, anxious, fearful, insecurely, lax, loose, relaxed, slack, more at loose. And then that was insecure, so insecurity. The quality or state of being insecure, which is unstable, precarious, shakiness, unsteadiness. More at the instability. You're using the wrong word. You guys aren't triggered by English, Webster's Dictionary and Thesaurus definition. You guys are all insecure. So, and I'll actually go ahead and introduce this one before I actually play the clip. If your video volume is loud, or your computer volume or device is loud, you might want to turn it down a little bit. This one's definitely histrionic. Then go ahead and explain how science has completely failed her to tell her about how her body works, but as psychology actually has explained, the way that we interpret things is we project our own expectations or our own personal experiences onto the world around us, including things that we're interested in, or aka what scientists would be interested in studying. And I'm sorry, if most scientists were men, especially back, in the earlier times of modern science, they wouldn't know anything about what it's like to have a fucking vagina. So, there you go. You keep bitching about how they can't talk about your uterus and your vagina and shit because you don't have one. Yeah, go with that, and then just think back. Okay, so they're all they know is what they've got down there. How the hell are they supposed to then go, maybe we should do studies about her vagina? Maybe they already assume that you know what it does because you never fucking brought up any kind of concern. Because women actually don't usually communicate and talk about problems. So if you actually open up your fucking mouth and we're a little bit productive with communicating, back and forth between whoever else, then maybe we would be able to address your fucking problems. But instead, you guys have been bottling it up forever, either from social construct or whatever, and now you're blowing the fuck up like a crazy bipolar histrionic bitch because nobody's listening to you because you never opened your mouth in the first place. Not at least about things that were, real problems.
Science! You invented the microwave 60 years ago so you could cook your hungry man's steak dinners, and you're just now getting around to my body. Thanks, science! And thanks, science, for discovering my orgasm and then giving me tips on how to keep having them. Like that time you suggested that I surround myself with men because they get competitive and work harder to please me, therefore resulting in a better climax. Thanks, science, for assuming that I like to fuck men.
Go ahead and throw in another educational term for you, scapegoat. Science, I'm pretty sure, I could check into it. I'm not entirely certain because I haven't actually looked it up. But I'm fairly sure that science did not create pornography. Or gang rape. Because also, another funny thing is, the Islam ideology and the Islamic culture, they denounce science. They think that science, anybody who tries to put science on a pedestal above Islam should be killed. And they gang rape people all the time. Women. Sometimes boys. I guess that's where the Catholics and the Muslims kind of, come together.
Someone has put these all here. Someone's put like all of these orange. You gotta be kidding. It's just like this declaration.
So here's another mentally disturbed young lady who looks like she likely has histrionic personality disorder and some sort of hallucinatory ideation. I would say that she might be schizophrenic, but it could also be some sort of paranoia disorder coupled with histrionic. Because if you read the DSM, which, if anything, most of these women should be at least aware of the DSM because their shrink has to have pulled it out by now. You can have multiple features or multiple personality or mental disorders. In fact, usually the more unstable something is, the more it potentially has more instability. Kind of like trigger things. I mean, if you get triggered by one thing, you get triggered by another thing. Just like that, the lethargic lady in the beginning was. The Declaration, because the term that I'm thinking of is like the Declaration of Independence, that's the thing. And I was just like, wow, the way she's using this, I just didn't get it. So, it says, from the 1960s, 1980s in both the United States and Europe, the new social policy emerged to reduce the number of residential mental health patients in more or less permanent institutional care. Wow, okay. Radical critics claim that institutionalized care produced what our Barton called institutional neurosis. None of these people have been locked up in institutions, though. I'm pretty sure most of those, were closed in the 80s. So, pretty sure most of these people are millennials. But it could be when all those institutions were closed, all the people that were in it ended up just being let out, and then people started listening to them, and then, Common Core came along, and you can't tell the difference between an intelligent person or a schizophrenic person, and then a schizophrenic writes a book, and, you can self-publish and stuff nowadays, and then they become professors, and then they start teaching gender studies. That would make sense. So synonyms with this declaration in the sociology book is anti-psychiatry. So, basically ignoring mental illness. Okay.
Right, of male dominance. Stop doing this stuff. Enough. Stop. It's like all over the place. Look at this. They're everywhere.
I have a friend that I used to hang out with a lot in college that was schizophrenic. And I talked him down numerous times on occasion from when he started having these weird paranoid delusions. And this chick needs a friend. Somebody needs to find her. Let her know that those sticks are there for people to be able to see the curb.
Oh my god, they put them around the entire place. Here, you know what?
Hey, crazy, go take your meds. They're all around the curb so cars can see where the curb is when the snow's too deep.
Give me a break.
I know you're a Bernie Sanders supporter and you can't afford a car and you're upset that they're in your way, but you need to go back to the
declaration of
psychiatric.
The destruction of women's rights, the destruction of children's rights. They're everywhere around the...
Because they don't know about them yet? Because I don't try to talk about trendy shit, I try to talk about real shit. And even though some real shit is now being trendy, I seem to still be the counter narrative to the real trendy shit because I can never be supportive of people's narrative. But I can support the fact that people have different opinions. But if you have a right to say something or express an opinion, you need to understand and remember I have every right to make fun of you. I pretty much eat, sleep, and live every day to just fight people. And something that I have been noticing, at least with some of the trendy bullshit that is on YouTube specifically. I would say YouTube specifically because I actually haven't met any of these characters, so I don't know. I assume that they're real, but just because of the fact that it almost seems like there's this disconnect as if it's a fictional thing. I've never seen any of them myself, and probably for their own good, you never want to come near me anyway.
Feminists do not want you to have to make alimony payments. Alimony is set up to combat the fact that women have been historically expected to prioritize domestic duties over professional goals, thus minimizing their earning potential as their traditional marriages end. The assumption... I'm reading, fuckface.
And I understand what the original concept of feminism is. It's empowering women and trying to show that women should not only be equal to men, but are actually better than men, and need to be validated and recognized as being the superior gender as opposed to an inferior gender role. That's what feminism, at least from a dictionary standpoint or a thesaurus, if you looked in like a sociology dictionary.
Feminism. The gender differences and specifically in terms of the theory of patriarchy. Oh god, I sound like that redhead lady. Wait, when was this book made? If this was made before, like, 2009. 2006. Where was this published, you son of a bitch? Well, first published in 1984, but I mean, it's probably been... Yeah, it's 2nd edition 1988, 3rd edition 1994, 4th edition 2000, 5th edition 2006. Can I have the first edition, please? The first wave of feminism was primarily concerned with the problem of formal equality between... Oddly enough, that was in the 1920s, and that was when Uranus was also in Aries. Yes, I also have to tie this into astrology. But synchronicity, even if you're not into astrology so much, most people that are into at least social studies and psychology know who Carl Jung is. And Carl Jung does talk about astrology. If you missed that or overlooked that, you can go look it up. And Google actually does have a little bit of accurate information on that still. But 1960s feminists assumed a more radical focus, seeking a revolutionary transformation of society as a whole. In theoretical terms, this radical turn involved the adoption of ideas from a variety of radical traditions, including Marxism, psychoanalysis, and anarchism. Struggle against patriarchy was also associated with anti-militarism and the ecological concerns about the environmental destruction of the planet. The social hierarchy, racism, warfare, violence. I love how racism... See, I think this is why they tried to redo this book, right? It's right there. It's kind of hard to see, but you notice. I noticed little stupid shit like that. The word racism's in caps and in completely different fonts. I went to art school, took graphic design, typography, marketing. I know what the fuck that is insinuating. That's subliminal messaging to emphasize that. So now I understand why this book was republished in 2006. Because also the other words that have that same kind of font and caps and in caps is feminism, patriarchy, imperialism, and racism. Only those words within this entire page here of a definition. Oh, definition. So maybe a woman wrote this one? And I would know, because I talk way too much. I wish I could not sometimes, if I had something. Yeah, but I'm a woman, women can't shut the fuck up. In the 1980s, 1990s, feminist social theory was influenced by the post-structuralist and postmodernist analysis. Following postmodernist emphasis on different... The longest freaking... Whoa, definition ever! Okay, hold on, I'm just gonna continue. Okay, so I'll always mention this first. It's claimed that third wave feminism is more sensitive to local diverse voices of feminism and rejects the universalistic perspective on a single feminist standpoint. Some of the critical publications of contemporary feminism include... Actually, I'm not going to read out those titles because I'm not going to enable any idiot that thinks that they want to jump on this bandwagon or something and is using my information to then further educate themselves to become a gremlin on society. Sorry, go look it up yourself. I'm not telling you the books. So blank. They were written in 1982, 1984, 1987. Aw, that's the year I was born. That's bullshit. 1989. Well, fuck you. Now you ruined the 80s for me.
So I'm not going to read any more of this crap because I'm going way too long, and that's what I was trying to avoid here. But correlations that I have with feminism and Islamophobia. Categories within a sociological environment are being misused and abused. I say misused because what third wave feminism is has nothing to do with the second wave, and it has nothing to do essentially with the first wave either. It tries to have some sort of narrative that supports those or, is an extension of that. But the social construct of today's society is completely different than in the 1920s when women actually had to fight to be able to vote. Which nowadays, a lot of these third wave feminists don't even care if they vote and think that they're standing up to the establishment, choosing not to vote. But in fact, instead of them continuing to have this victimhood narrative, if they were to actually be proactive and, be able to step up to the plate and show their worth as an individual, not as a woman, not as a man, but an individual contributor, they wouldn't have to worry so much about emphasizing on some sort of gender bias. I've never been somebody who has ever thought for even 1 minute I've never even mentioned anything like that in my entire life about a man being better than me or me being better than a man. I just am better than a lot of people. There's no gender, difference involved. I do think that I'm smarter than a lot of people. And, that's part of also my Freudian, my Carl Jung projection I am getting better, but I'm not the brightest person. And see, another thing with being validating your own motives and narrative gives you perspective and makes you be able to admit things without going crazy and taking things too far. So it's one thing to believe what you say, and it's another thing to continue to push and insinuate that you believe what you say, and then be projecting that you actually are so sure of yourself, and then making even more of a fool of yourself and making even more of a fool. So, the misuse of the label, basically this is what I would say. The second wave feminism in the 1960s, I have the same criticism for the third wave feminism. You shouldn't have used the word feminist. You could use something that was similar, but the fact that you try to take that label and then create its identity all over again. I understand that happens throughout, civilizations and cultures, especially in language. But if you're trying to create some sort of relevance between, a different movement that happened within a small amount of time, so the 1920s and 1960s, that's 40 years. So that's within, an actual cultural generation where the same demographic or the same group of people are still alive. So the only reason why they would use that is because they figured that they could either ride on its coattails and or they just they felt like they were the revolutionaries of that movement. Please just call yourself something else. Again, the third wave feminism people, please just call yourself something else. I'm not saying that it's not that, but just do something. I mean, and I was about to say, like, you call yourself fem-Nazis, but I mean, I wouldn't do that either, because again, the whole Nazi thing happened in World War II, and you would then be riding on the coattails of that, or you would be projected to be involved with that. And then my other thing with the Islamophobia people. The Islamophobia concept, the rhetoric, is part of their taqiyya stuff, or part of their psychological manipulation, in order to persuade you to let in their Trojan horse. And I'm not saying that all of them are like that. There are people who were raised in the culture, because I've looked at this. They say about under 20% of all the Muslim world is actually well rehearsed with what the Quran teaches, with Muhammad's biography, and actually has physically read it for themselves. Similar to Christianity, how so many Christians don't even read their own Bible. I can actually quote things in the Bible and school Christians that go to church every Sunday on things that they don't even read or they even argue are in there until I actually pull it out. And I even have one of those special derp Bibles. I have a couple, but I've got the one that breaks open the itty bitty sections and it's giant font, so I can show them really big, just in case they're partially blind. I don't want to discriminate. It's a disability. But so basically what I'm getting at is, just as Christians are completely detached from their original dogmatic faith, there are moderate Muslims, or Muslims that, or people who were associated or raised within the Muslim sociological norms that now wanted to escape that for whatever reason, or there was something that benefited them in the secular world that they cannot get in the Muslim world. Therefore, they came here. So, because they have now assimilated into the sociological institution that is the free world or the secular world, they now have a cognitive dissonance or conflict within themselves about the values that were instilled upon them when they were psychological sponges, and the actual autonomy of the individual that they are now, consciously. So the cognitive dissonance comes into a couple of different ways. It would manifest into denial, or it would manifest into that they want a reformation, just like the Bible had the New Testament added back in about the 16th century, I believe, maybe the 15th century, where they decided to say, hey, so let's not do this whole barbaric stuff anymore. And people that argue the Crusades, also the Crusades were a part of the Old Testament, so great aspect. So essentially, whenever they tried to bring up the Crusades as an argument, that was back when there was something to argue about Christianity. And then they decided to change their ways because there was a collective mass that said, hey, we need to stop with this big shit. People are trying to do that with Islam now. We're going to try to stop this stupid shit. The difference between Christianity in their dogma within their book and Islam is that in Islam it's written in there word for word that you're supposed to basically silence by death anybody who opposes the ideology, to keep people from trying to revolt for a reformation or changes. The Bible did not have that. It said that, the word God is the ultimate word, but it didn't say that we have to thoroughly kill someone and decapitate them or whatever, or strike them at the neck because they oppose God's narrative. That's what the whole hell and purgatory and everything is for. So that's the issue I have with that. So anybody who is a quote-unquote part of the demographic that is the Muslim world, because if you're born in the Muslim world, you don't know anything different. And also because obviously I would assume that there's a good amount, I don't know the actual numbers of how many women as opposed to men there are in the Islamic world. I would assume probably more men, because they kill women all the time just for shits and giggles. But if you even were to theoretically look at it, like half of the entire population are women and half of the entire population are men. It's already a social norm for them to not allow women to go to school or to any education institution. So therefore, half of their entire demographic is already completely ignorant to not only being able to think for themselves, most likely, and they, instill that by gaslighting them with any kind of psychopathic, abusive tactic. That's also another reason why they likely marry the girls into at a young age, and why they emphasize that 6 years old is an appropriate age to marry someone, because once you reach the age of 7, you start to develop your own sense of autonomy, and that's when you start to say, no, I like this and not like that, and I like this and not like that. But if you're programmed from a very young age, you won't defy who you're supposed to listen to. So they do the social programming, which is what the media does in modern society in America today. And then they try to induce fear. And then they try to eliminate the potential ability for any of them to think for themselves by basically annihilating any opportunity to educate themselves. So exactly what has been going on in the Muslim world for quite some time, I think the entire time of Islam exists, essentially, is exactly what either whoever you want to call it, the elite people who have all the money, who are concerned about the overgrowing population just as much as any kind of eco-friendly person, is concerned that there needs to be a mass execution of a lot of people. And the easiest way to let people, kill themselves is to just take the warning labels off everything, make everything happen. But basically what I'm getting at is that the moderate Muslims, or the people that are no longer living in the Muslim Islamic world, that say that there are some of them that say they want a reformation, and I completely understand and agree with them. But again, they're sitting there saying that I'm a Muslim and we need reformation. Okay, so because of the actions of what the Muslim community does, what the Islam ideology teaches, and the counter-narrative of the actual faithful Muslims that are now trying to silence you, even if you happen to, speak over their narrative, you are going to instantly be discredited in any way just because of the label that you wear. And I say this specifically from a personal experience. So I am part of the LHP community. I say LHP for multiple reasons. Some of the LHP community says that because they feel fancy. And they also feel like they're not part of the Church of Satan, because Anton LaVey, even though he has multiple credit for taking the brunt of all the negative stigma, for trying to build a foundation on the what I would consider, if you were to combine atheism with anti-religious kind of ideology and logic. I wouldn't say science, because I've actually never met any Satanists that are scientists. They claim to be science buffs, but none of them that are actually successfully involved in the scientific field of any kind. Even Anton LaVey himself was a carny reject that would work at circuses or do the side job things. And he was more intelligent than the majority of them. That says something. So what I'm getting at is that when I was younger and I first started reading the Satanic Bible and all that, and I also have this, which I decide to cover depending on where I'm going because I'm strategic like that, I've understood when I was younger, I took the brunt of it and I said, I am a Satanist. And I understood also, the hard way at first, that when I called myself a Satanist, that every single person, regardless if they're never religious, came out of the woodworks to tell me how I'm going to go to hell and that I'm the devil and that I deserve to die. And luckily I was just like, I don't care, fuck you. You're gonna be right there with me, I'll reserve your seat. VIP status, yo. I see the way you treat people. And then that's actually when I started emphasizing on their book and how much contradictory bullshit there is. So instead of getting upset or whatever, and lashing back out at them, either physically or through threats or whatever, because of what they're saying to me, I decided to then turn it against them and go read more of their book, which I had already read before, because I had looked into multiple religions once before, not because I believe in them, but because I was curious, and I started just doing it right back to them. Say, oh, by the way, you're not supposed to be wearing that kind of fabric, did you know that that's against God? Or that you're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do that. I was like, oh, didn't I just see you, like, you know, didn't you just say you had sex with somebody? I'm pretty sure you're, doing that at a wedlock with, you know, chastity, and not supposed to be doing that, sort of thing. And they would just make them really mad. So, but here's the point that I'm getting at. After I grew up a little bit, so I was like in my teenage years then, I realized that if I continue to associate or just say, I'm a Satanist, hello, hail Satan, I'm a Satanist, how are you? How are you, John? I'm a Satanist, hi, Bob. Like, I would be treated like what the, like, stereotypes that society assumes is satanic. And since the social construct is based primarily on the Christian ideology, because it has been passed on throughout our culture, because that was the majority religion at the time. Even if people that aren't religious, that have never opened up a Bible, will have some sort of bias or like discomfort with me saying that. So they instantly just go, you're dumb. Even the people that aren't really scared, they're just like, you're dumb, you're stupid. Like, even my own father, he claims to not be religious. He was raised Catholic. He's completely against religion in all forms. Me and him both have that in common. But when I told him I'm a Satanist, he laughs at me. So again, what I'm saying is that even though he goes completely against religion, when I tell him that I'm like that, he laughs and says, whatever, kiddo. And I accepted that a long time ago. So throughout this postmodern Satanist movement into the 2000s, like the late 2000s, and into, you know, the 2010s, there has been this shift, and there's also been like a branching out of all different kinds of factions within the satanic community. You can be a theistic Satanist, which is mean you actually think that there are demons and devils and that you actually are cool with them.
Sometimes you get more complex groups like Temple of Blood or Joy of Satan too, but
yeah,
fringe.
Yeah, and then there's Joy of Satan, and then obviously there's the Church of Satan, and there's, you know, like even somebody who's based off the Lovecraft Cthulhu, and
I think Jihad's pretty much gone off the radar by this point, though. It doesn't really exist anymore.
But you can still find it on Google.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting at, because people will probably go Google what I'm saying. At least the people that have made it this far, because I'm assuming if you have a brain, you wouldn't have made it this far into the video without at least being a little curious or smart. So anyway, what I'm getting at is that I call myself LHP. Nobody knows what the fuck that is. I'm not someone who hides what I am, but I strategically choose when it is appropriate and when it is not appropriate to release that kind of information, because I don't have some sort of cause or sacrificial thing I need to fight for. I understand that I am a person, and that what I want to do and what is for me, it takes priority over any kind of social construct or any kind of, you know, martyr sacrificial bullshit. Because that's what, you know, a modern humanistic kind of atheist person would do. So what I'm saying is that all the people that are claiming that they want a reformation with Islam, I don't really think that there can ever be a reformation, because it specifically says that you can't change it. The original Testament in the Bible, the Old Testament, never said that you couldn't change it. It just said the Word of God is the ultimate word. It never said that God can't change their mind. In Islam, it says specifically God will never change their mind. This is the narrative, and fuck you if you say otherwise. So my advice to you is to abandon your associations with Islam, create a new faction, and rewrite the fucking book. You saw how many times that sociology dictionary was rewritten? Do that. Just put a different title on it. Change Muhammad's name to something else. Put it in Arabic if you want. Take back Iran, why don't you? I'm sure 1979 is missing Iran. But what I'm getting at is that you guys don't understand you're being socially programmed, and you guys don't understand how defeating you are towards your own agenda by trying to hijack, and try not to say that that's a pun, but I'm pretty sure that's a pun. Try to hijack a different social, organization or entity within the social constructs to validate your narrative. You just need to stop doing that. And so the only thing I can think of, whoever is programming the feminists, and obviously nobody's programming the Muslims that are trying to get a reformation. They come from two different origins, but both are affecting modern society in the same fashion. You're just going to create mass confusion, manipulating the social norms, which manipulating the social norms from the Muslims' perspective, or the ex-Muslims as I would call them, is the good for humanity. And then the manipulating of social norms is from the feminist concept, or the Marxism that's associated with that, is just for ultimate domination and mind control. And I always tell people with Hollywood stuff, it's either really, really embellished or it's symbolism. The zombie apocalypse has already started. And the Marxism and the mind control is that apocalypse. And people will now start dying for it.